So, I want to begin by talking a little bit about my own relationship to Smash. My story starts off probably a little bit like yours. I'm a little baby, my big brother owns a copy of hit Nintendo platform fighter Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and I get hooked onto the funny characters and colors for years and franchises to come. I never really take it seriously, don't get me wrong, because I have other fulfilling hobbies, but I can put up a damn good fight at parties. Fast forward to March 2020. It's really fucking weird to look back 18 months into the beginning of the pandemic and identify, like, what current habits or interests developed as a direct result of lockdown measures. Have you ever done that and been like, oh my god, how my life would have been different? I guess that's our collective fixation as humans living in the current day and age. But for me, it was a couple of things. Podcasts, which I couldn't stand pre-COVID, are now essential and constant listening. The second main interest that flourished was, to my chagrin, competitive Super Smash Bros. Videos. An addiction that basically still plagues me to this day. I think what really captured me at first was the speed and creativity of movement certain players and characters incorporated into their fighting style. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before at high school parties. So hypnotic and satisfying, it was like watching an intricate dance. But whenever a maneuver was executed perfectly, you would see the instant gratification of a combo or a KO. It feels strange to say that, but I was honestly visually seduced by the movements and rhythms of competitive Smash. Then my little obsession spiral ensued. This newfound addiction makes sense though, doesn't it? I mean, thanks to being a Zoomer millennial cusp, I had already cultivated internet rat habits that were basically kept in control due to the presence of the outside world. Then, severed from all social and public life, I became an online creeper to the most extreme degree. Basically, I was on any website where I could just gab with strangers and spy on their posts, and it wasn't considered weird. I also had all the free time in the world to watch dozens and dozens of Smash videos. My investment was purely incubated in the digital world through my own private consumption. The result is that I don't really feel connected to a so-called community of Smash in any meaningful way. Community as a term is applied liberally to like a diverse range of groups, even huge corporations, in an attempt to paint themselves as anything but exploitative. That being said, I never went to locals, my friends don't really play Smash, I don't know any of these Twitter weirdos personally, and generally remain uninterested in the idea of competition in sport. So, I don't feel much local community. But I do feel personal investment as a witness, purely through online spectatorship of the goings-on of competitive Smash. Not just through the gameplay itself, which was what first caught my attention, but rather through the people and culture. So much of the information about and interactions with Smash players takes place on forums and Twitter and other social online spaces, which IMO since their inception have made us into useless little mind readers. Like, social media has allowed us to gaze upon the inner thoughts of strangers. And for what? Honestly, I feel like we're all acting against God's will by having instant access to the deepest gripes and woes and conflicts of utter strangers. And then we're able to, like, speculate on their psychology and complexes. It's fucked up, man. Well, it turns out that Super Smash Bros. Was the perfect culture to fill the parasociality-shaped niche in my withered little heart. And I'm not the only one. It's kind of a perfect storm because people are somehow able to generate parasocial relationships with completely inaccessible, socially obscure A-list celebrities. So imagine how easily you can slip into a relationship with someone who might respond to your chat messages or your Twitter mentions. They're like your friend, right? You can even see into their goddamn bedrooms. Straddling the confessional line between public performance and personal vulnerability is precisely what makes streamers and influencers so successful. Combine that with the fact that a good chunk of the Smash demographic is literal children, possibly socially ostracized, and what do you get? Thousands of followers flocking to high-profile Smash players, commentators, streamers, and organizers. Followers who are willing to attack, defend, and police based on their perceived relationship with a certain micro-celebrity, and what might be anxiously or paranoically interpreted as a slight against their idol. This is the environment in which contemporary Smash conflicts arise, and that doesn't even include any discussion of the larger socio-political context or the history of Smash as a nerdy melee boys club. So, why do I even care? To this end, I've always been really interested to observe the dynamics about gender and power in subcultures like Smash and other gaming communities. Like, for me, there's a great internal conflict, ambivalence, if you will, that really keeps me hooked. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the gameplay, the mechanics, the glory of a good set, and the diversity of, like, characters and players and their skill sets. But also, in my mind, there's a lot of interconnected reasons to hate Smash, and they're also related to why it seems so difficult to resolve ongoing conflicts. For example, competitive Smash culture enforces the evils of capitalism. Everything, including objects, experiences, and interactions, exist as wins or losses on which to capitalize or optimize. It also romanticizes the grind, quote unquote, of obsessive, repetitive practice with narrow-minded focus. Actually, I think maybe Ninja did this. I don't know if Smash did this. But either way, it's like kind of an extension of that logic. It ingrains in children, a warped image of what ethical labor and soul fulfillment should be like. For example, so many people stream for unreasonable hours, existing purely in the public eye. It's like an unhealthy work-life balance. I don't know. And also, Smash is a part of gaming, which, like, in itself has a history of gatekeeping, neglect, and violence towards gender marginalized participants. I think that we can all attest to this by this point. And, last but not least, let's be real, it's essentially an elaborate advertisement for a multi-million-dollar entertainment company. Like, that's what Smash is. I think there are a lot of other reasons why I feel the urge to evaluate gaming culture through such a critical lens, too. I mean, obviously, gaming culture is a world that we live in. We spend time here. We collectively want to make it a better place because it's a huge part of our lives. So there is merit in treating this shit seriously. Like, even if it's easy for me to write it off as just a bunch of weird nerds. Like, these nerds have real feelings. They're real people. And they also experience, like, real consequences for their actions. But also, personally speaking, if I'm going to be experiencing the shame of consuming Smash content as an adult woman with an otherwise respectable life, I feel like critical analysis at least grants me some safe distance from that shame. Like, my pride can't afford to surrender completely to admitting the mindless pleasure of watching cartoon characters fight each other, so I need to find some other way to make it intellectually stimulating. And I guess since I went to art school, this is just the way my brain is wired to look at things. But the particular dynamic I have with Smash really gives me, like, grade school flashbacks to when I would invest a lot of time and energy into friendships with boys who I really cared about, but were engaging in behavior that I found inappropriate or harmful. I feel like a girl again, with too much attachment to, like, a tail-spinning fighter jet, powerless to change its course, just doomed to watch its immature and reckless disaster. Like, that's how it feels sometimes. So this brings me to where it gets dark. I think now is a good time to just forewarn people that I'll be speaking very broadly and non-specifically about sexual assault and patterns of harm. Just putting that out there. So in Smash, it seems that problems regularly get bad enough that they blow up into public spectacle. The thoughts or feelings of one prominent player can be immediately jettisoned into a discourse piece. Horrible details of personal traumas are filed away in twit-longer essays. The worst examples took place in July 2020, when a seemingly endless stream of sexual misconduct allegations proliferated the Smash scene. I want to avoid rehashing collective Smash trauma, so I won't be going into detail here, but I made a comic about my feelings and thoughts regarding what had transpired, and I wanted to hear what other Smashers thought, so when I posted it onto Smash Reddit, I got a mix of different responses. From the replies to my post and also just like responses that I saw to the general situation, it was immediately clear to me that nobody was equipped to ameliorate what had just happened, nor self-reflect and work through the philosophical implications of sexual assault cases involving some of the most prominent and beloved Smash players in the scene. Like, I could hardly think about it for longer than a minute without giving myself a fucking headache. How can we bear to reflect if most of us got into this culture through the dumb, instantaneous gratification of watching cartoon characters fight each other? Like, if mediators and trained practitioners of conflict resolution regularly struggle with the question of what justice looks like, why would gamers whose most practiced skills might include a Bowser Jr. combo suddenly know what to do when the safety of their community is being undermined? I'm very sorry to take us back to 2019 cancel culture discourse, but whether or not you think cancel culture is real, I think we can all agree that public call-out is a symptom of failure. The reason why private matters and interpersonal conflicts are thrust out into the court of public opinion in the first place is because somebody was harmed, and the pre-existing systems for conflict resolution, if any of them existed at all, failed at restoring the relationships or transforming the conditions of harm. This fails not only the victim, but all parties involved in any future conflicts which might arise. Particularly when the wrongdoer is in similar circles, taking conflict or harm to the Twitter masses is born of desperation. Desperation for solidarity, desperation to warn others, or just desperation for justice and conflict resolution. If you can make things better without inviting the wrath, pity, and judgment of millions of Twitter strangers, why wouldn't you? So there is an abundance of common, unresolved, unaddressed hurt that is exacerbated by the public compulsion to sensationalize conflict into a circus of black and white moral judgments. This turns any serious conflict into a conspiracy theory-esque web of public spectacle onto which the audience obsessively reads patterns and cycles, draws heroes and villains, and formulates convoluted motives and ultimatums. Grifters can earn clout by telling people what to think and squeezing profit from the personal woes of strangers. Spectators result to public shaming in some futile attempt to seek justice. Any indication of poor mental health is no longer a cue to check in. It's now some event to just ogle at and speculate about. So when I watch these events unfold, I can't help but think, we are not properly attuned to the work of care. We can hardly even care for ourselves. Law and order. To be fair, there is a reason why we always gravitate towards good and evil, hero and villain narratives. But just because there's always a winner and loser of a Smash set doesn't mean life works that way. I'm sorry, I have been making so many jabs at Smashers, it's so easy. But I really am trying to speak from a place of mutual understanding and compassion. I struggle with this all the time. Binary thinking is not by any means an issue limited to Smash. Everyone is, in one way or another, poisoned into binary thinking. For example, the implicit belief that there is a right way to live life, really, and a wrong way to live life, or that there are only two ways to express gender. I'm sure you can all think of times when you've, encountered and struggled with binary thinking. Let's apply this to our judgment of people. People are complicated, and many conflicting things can be true about them at once, unfortunately. You could have been a victim of shitty behavior and also be doing a shitty thing to someone else presently. Your hurt feelings could be worthy of honor and recognition, but the way you express this hurt could do damage to other people. You could be selfless to some, but cruel to others. It is so difficult for us to hold two truths at once, and these ideas can often feel irreconcilable. As a result, we are oftentimes replicating carceral logic in an attempt to reconcile and simplify issues and make definitive judgments. Our legal system incentivizes these right or wrong dichotomies, and we internalize that into our own thinking too. That's one element of what I mean by carceral logic. But another idea that we get from our legal justice system, but also from the capitalist logic of meritocracy, which I was alluding to before, is the idea of punishment. Our justice system is predicated on this. If somebody breaks a rule, they should be punished. The issue with punitive justice is that oftentimes the problem lies not just with individuals, but with systems and groups of people. It also puts a burden on the victim to provide perfect proof and a narrative, a requirement that often re-traumatizes and invalidates victims before they can even begin to process what happened. Moreover, punitive justice ends up defining people's identities by their actions. I personally do not want to be judged and treated by the worst thing that I have done, and it would be hypocritical of me to try and hold other people to the same standard. But even more importantly, does punitive justice actually work? I mean, does it rehabilitate anyone? Does it meaningfully change the conditions of harm? I would argue no, and a lot of other people would agree with me. There is a studied cycle of reinstitutionalization in our legal justice system. Anyone with some relationship to incarceration can attest to how fucked up it is. This isn't to say that anyone has been incarcerated for doing anything bad in Smash, but the same reasoning applies. We want to be able to tell ourselves that there's something that's intrinsically, biologically, spiritually different from us, that separates us from quote-unquote evil. But people aren't disposable. We all have intrinsic value. We don't just vanish into the air once scorned, and neither does the harm we cause. We take up space, we linger, we endure. That's what we do as living creatures. We're not disposable, and we can't treat each other that way either. That's just not how it works. This is why whenever smashers propose legality and police involvement as possible solutions, I'm not really interested. They are effectively requesting the problem be replaced by new ones, by taking conflict into the hands of a system that has proven itself time and time again to violently and oppressively maintain the conditions that cause harm. Don't we have an opportunity here to build something better? So, I realize that I've been talking a lot about the failures of our legal and justice system, and you might be thinking, okay, that's fine, but what does the court of Twitter.com have to do with this? Because that's where all Smash affairs are judged and executed. What does this have to do with the way our gaming communities operate? I suppose what I'm getting at here is that we should aim to seek justice through a process that might actually support the victim while ensuring that the conditions of harm are transformed. Tournament organizers, planners, and administrators have been dealing with this question in their own ways on a case-by-case basis, I'm sure. But it is hard to know what the right call is and how to keep all parties safe. Anyone with this kind of experience is no stranger to creative problem solving. Whether it's successful or not is a different question. No matter what role you play in your community, big or small, there might be a little cop in your head who wants to power trip and punish. We need to ignore that voice in order to move forward with more productive responses to damage. And if you're just a Twitter bystander, finding the right process might not involve you at all. So, stay in your lane. But God forbid, if you do find yourself embroiled in shit, are there options at all? On that note, I'm gonna take us away from the comfortingly myopic little world of Smash and transport us into something I learned in real life that might help me frame the situation. Mia Mingus defines transformative justice as this. Transformative justice, or TJ in short, is a political framework and approach for responding to violence, harm, and abuse. At its most basic, it seeks to respond to violence without creating more violence and/or engaging in harm reduction to lessen the violence. TJ can be thought of as a way of making things right, getting in right relation, or creating justice together. Transformative justice responses and interventions: 1. Do not rely on the state, e.g., police, prisons, the criminal legal system, ICE, foster care system, though some TJ responses do rely on or incorporate social services like counseling. 2. Do not reinforce or perpetuate violence such as oppressive norms or vigilantism. And most importantly, 3. Actively cultivate the things we know prevent violence, such as healing, accountability, resilience, and safety for all involved. I was lucky enough to attend a workshop on transformative justice by Rania Al-Mujmar, and I hope to impart some of the ideas shared there. As someone who sees the justice system as completely failing to protect people and prevent harm, I am attracted to the theoretical framework of transformative justice and its applications, from personal conflicts of the smallest degree to unruly ecosystems that I have no control over, like Smash. After the workshop, I sought out more talks and resources which I've compiled in the video description. Transformative Justice, or TJ, is closely connected with abolitionist and feminist movements. It's exciting to me because it challenges us to imagine systems of justice and repair that might just actually work, and that require creative problem solving, like I mentioned before. Because, I mean, what do we have to lose if the state system sucks? In Kai Cheng Thom's TJ talk, Loving Justice, she addresses the need to facilitate a space where, rather than foster instinctual responses of self-preservation, such as shutting down or escaping blame, or getting angry and lashing out, a window of transformation should be accessed, a place in the mind where meaningful change can be sought out with curiosity, respect, and compassion. I want to clarify that there is a difference between punishment and facing necessary consequences. There is a difference between allowing the wrongdoer resources to grow and allowing the wrongdoer to flee accountability. And there is also a difference between a conflict between somebody who holds power and resources and can afford to lose a lot, and somebody who holds little to none and can afford to lose nothing. The differences in all these situations can be difficult to tease out and be cognizant of in your mediation, even if you are a mediator, like working closely with each party. And even if you do manage to get all parties to agree to participate in a transformative justice process, and even if communication is open and measured, failure is a very real possibility. If you decide you want to try mediating conflict, it's important to get support from other people and make sure each party has their material needs met and is getting adequate support. It's no easy task, basically. But when beginning a mediation, it's necessary to ask yourself and other parties some questions. Am I the right person for this mediation? What are my biases? What was the harm in all its facets? What are our boundaries? Are they being respected? What were the power dynamics and intersections of oppression involved? What topics or questions are difficult to broach? Why? What are the material and psychological needs? What resources can we access in our community to meet those needs? What reparations can be made to the wronged? How can we intervene or ensure accountability? TJ is not a one-time event, it's a continuous process. When we see victims of harmful behavior express what they need to feel safe, we need to listen to their desires. And when we are the victims of harmful behavior, we might really want to seek revenge to find adequate punishment, rather than attempt processes of transformation. And that's a fucking fair response, too. We often have completely justified feelings that also happen to be incompatible, inconvenient, or unproductive to the effort at hand, hence the possibility of failure. But even when reconciliation is not an all-in option, we can still invest in our own capacity to keep each other safe. Sometimes I look back on all the shit that's transpired in Smash, and wonder how things could have been different if we were open to, like, new models of justice. Honestly, I find myself fluctuating between renouncing any so-called community entirely and feeling deep joy from being in relation to others, even if it's just internet strangers. So I hope some folks have found these ideas around transformative justice interesting as I have. I feel like the easiest way to begin processing these ideas is by starting hyper-locally, or like just through your own network of influence. Like for me, I find it really helps to chat about this stuff with my friends or coworkers, or wherever I feel like I have a voice and a presence. And one last thing. If you're interested in some of these ideas and want to talk about them more, please feel free to email me or shoot me a DM. I'm always open to chat about this stuff, but to be clear, I am not an expert, but I am very interested in the intersection between gaming, and critical theory. I've included like a million relevant links in the video description, so I hope that those are helpful too. Thank you guys. Take care. Bye!